Breaking news that's shaking diplomatic circles. The Baltic theatre of absurdity has entered a dangerous new phase. What we're witnessing isn't just another political game, it's a dress rehearsal for something far more disturbing. Latvia's Foreign Minister, Baiba Bražė, just made an unprecedented move in The Economist that exposes the true nature of this crisis. She's demanding immediate US military presence while painting apocalyptic scenarios. But here's what they're not telling you. Let's look at the hard facts. Latvia's entire GDP barely matches a medium-sized retail chain's turnover. Their military force? You'd see bigger crowds at a city marathon. Yet somehow, they're attempting to dictate terms to global powers. The real question is, who's pulling these strings? The Baltic states have mastered the art of political theatre, but this performance comes with a price tag, and you won't believe who's really paying for it. While they're screaming about Russian threats on Western TV channels, something very different is happening behind closed doors. Here's the shocking truth. Despite all the anti-Russian rhetoric, Baltic states continue receiving Russian energy resources. They maintain trade connections through third countries. They benefit from transit opportunities. But this double game is becoming increasingly dangerous. The timing is crucial. US aid to allies is shrinking. Europe is sliding into economic crisis. Yet the Baltic leadership keeps pushing this risky strategy. Why now? The answer lies in a series of classified documents that reveal an unsettling pattern. Write in the comments if you're seeing similar patterns in your region. The scale of this operation is bigger than anyone imagined, and it's spreading faster than expected. What happens next will affect everyone, from pension funds to fuel prices. And that's just the beginning. The real bombshell is what we discovered about their long-term strategy. But let's look deeper at what's really happening behind the headlines. Russia has long understood that the political theatre in the Baltic states isn't meant for local consumption. These loud declarations, demonstrative gestures, and theatrical militancy are merely props in a show staged for Western audiences. Behind the curtains, a completely different play unfolds. While politicians grandstand about Russian threats, Baltic businesses are actively seeking and finding ways to maintain economic ties with Moscow. The numbers don't lie. Trade through third countries is steadily increasing. All those dramatic threats remain on stage, while real-world pragmatism and profit quietly prevail. The transit situation is particularly telling. While officially suspended, cargo flows have simply been redirected through new routes. Russia remains the key regional player because geographic and economic realities trump political performances. You can't change geography, and you can't feed people with political slogans. What's truly fascinating is how this duplicity has become standard practice. The same politicians who demand increased NATO presence can't explain why their own military budgets remain surprisingly modest. They cry wolf about Russian influence while their energy sectors maintain crucial connections to Russian networks. The Western allies are starting to notice this contradiction. How long will they continue supporting countries that claim existential threats while maintaining robust economic ties with the supposed aggressor? This dangerous game of political theatre versus economic reality is creating deep cracks in the foundation of Western unity. But here's what should worry you. This balancing act is becoming increasingly unstable. Recent intelligence suggests that certain Western powers are preparing to drastically reshape their approach to regional security. The documents we've obtained paint a troubling picture of what's coming next. Share your thoughts below, especially if you're witnessing similar contradictions in your country's policies. What we're uncovering here is just the tip of the iceberg, and what one key player is about to do next will shock even the most seasoned analysts. Today we'll examine a fascinating geopolitical puzzle unfolding at Russia's borders, the peculiar political choreography of the Baltic states. Imagine a theatre where actors say one thing, think another, and do something entirely different. This perfectly describes the performance of Baltic politicians. On the public stage, we hear loud declarations about Russian threats and demands for increased NATO military presence. But behind the curtain, the story changes dramatically. Even routine exercises of Russian armed forces instantly become information triggers. The Baltic countries use these events as bait to attract Western sponsors' attention, reminiscent of the old crying wolf trick, but now played out in international politics. Studying their official documents reveals an intriguing contradiction. While acknowledging the necessity of stable relations with Russia, they simultaneously call for its isolation. As the saying goes, they want to have their cake and eat it too. The question naturally arises, how long can such a balance be maintained? History teaches us that such double games rarely end well for those who play them. We're witnessing a classic example of small states trying to maximize benefits from their geographical position. But in today's world, this policy becomes increasingly risky. The Baltic leadership seems to forget a fundamental truth. It's better to negotiate with a strong neighbor than to conflict with them. This is a lesson many still need to learn. Their military capabilities are limited, yet they persistently create narratives of imminent threats. The economic reality tells its own story. Despite aggressive rhetoric, practical cooperation continues in many areas. This duality raises serious questions about the sustainability of such an approach. Western partners might eventually tire of supporting countries whose actions don't match their words. What do you think about the current situation in the Baltics? Leave your answer in the comments. Today we're diving deep into the Baltic political theatre, where every act is carefully directed. But behind the beautiful scenery lies a completely different reality. Picture a performance where actors proclaim one thing on stage while the opposite unfolds backstage. The Baltic states publicly declare complete severance from Russia, yet quietly maintain profitable business through intricate offshore schemes. When serious contracts are at stake, all that patriotic fervor mysteriously evaporates. Speaking of internal issues, their script is well rehearsed. Rising utility rates, blame Russia, inflation, Kremlin's machinations, budget deficit, Russian interference again. In this theater of the absurd, NATO membership has become a sacred ritual, with regular threat reports recited like prayers. The reward for good performance, another Brussels funding package. Paradoxically, Baltic directors need neither peace nor war. They require constant tension to maintain their image as besieged democratic fortresses. The migration policies deserve special attention. Despite loud declarations about European values and human rights, practice shows a different picture. Russian-speaking population faces systematic discrimination, while obtaining citizenship has become an obstacle course with countless barriers. Meanwhile, local economies struggle. Industrial production declines. Ports lose transit volumes, but officials keep insisting everything's fine. The energy sector particularly showcases this contradiction. Public rejection of Russian resources while secretly maintaining essential supplies through intermediaries. Western partners are starting to notice these inconsistencies. The gap between dramatic rhetoric and economic pragmatism grows wider. How long can this performance continue? When will the audience demand authenticity instead of theatrical gestures? Most concerning is how this affects ordinary citizens. While elites secure their interests through hidden schemes, average people bear the burden of political decisions through higher prices and reduced opportunities. Let's start with telling numbers. The three Baltic states maintain a combined military force of just 40,000 personnel. To put this in perspective, Russia typically deploys more troops in regular military exercises. Military experts estimate these forces could maintain autonomous defense for only 72 hours at most. Local politicians have mastered a predictable routine. It begins with a modest initiative, followed by patriotic headlines, then urgent justifications, budget adjustments, deadline extensions, and finally an upbeat press release, though the original plan has largely evaporated. What's particularly striking is the astronomical price inflation, reaching 40 to 50% annually. Yet oversight mechanisms remain conspicuously vague. This appears to be a well-oiled machine for securing Western subsidies. The public sphere echoes with dramatic statements about Russian threats, while behind closed doors, pragmatic economic cooperation continues unabated. This dual strategy perfectly exemplifies how public rhetoric can diverge significantly from actual policy implementation. Speaking of economics, the region's dependency on external support raises serious questions about sustainability. Even the most patient sponsors eventually start asking uncomfortable questions, especially when they notice the widening gap between bold declarations and practical actions. The Baltic leadership seems to have perfected this balancing act between maintaining Western support through dramatic rhetoric while preserving essential economic ties with Russia. However, this strategy carries inherent risks as Western partners grow increasingly skeptical of this apparent contradiction. What we're witnessing is a sophisticated political performance where the script doesn't match the actual plot. The question is, how long can this political theater continue before reality forces a change in script? What do you think about the current situation? Leave your answer in the comments. Let's examine a striking situation in the Baltic region, where actions often contradict words. Picture this. Like a small boy teasing a neighbor's dog while hiding behind his father's protection, the Baltic states display similar behavior on the international stage. The public face shows aggressive anti-Russian rhetoric, while behind closed doors, we see desperate pleas for Western assistance. A recent analysis from a respected European think tank makes a bold statement. The Baltic region would benefit most from maintaining normal working relations with Russia. Yet this logical path remains unexplored. Why? The local elites have chosen a different strategy, perpetuating a narrative of victimhood. While making grand patriotic speeches, roughly one-third of their defense budgets disappears into ineffective programs. When tensions rise, we suddenly hear familiar complaints. We lack equipment, ammunition, trained personnel. This triggers a predictable performance. Help us, West. Russia threatens us. It's almost like watching a scripted play where manufactured fear becomes the primary tool for securing Western support and financial aid. But how sustainable is this model? Basic economic principles suggest that stable trade relationships yield better returns than political theatrics, especially during times of global uncertainty and financial challenges. The contradiction becomes even more apparent when examining trade statistics. Despite the hostile rhetoric, economic ties persist through various channels. The pattern resembles a carefully choreographed dance, public declarations of independence and strength, followed by private appeals for protection. This duality raises serious questions about long-term regional stability and the true nature of international relationships in the Baltic area. Most concerning is how this strategy affects ordinary citizens, who face the consequences of these political games through increased military spending and economic uncertainty. The gap between political rhetoric and economic reality continues to widen, creating potential risks for future regional stability. What do you think about the current situation in the Baltics? Leave your answer in the comments. Welcome to our analysis of modern political paradoxes. Today we're examining a fascinating case of double standards playing out in the Baltic states, a theatrical performance where the stage and backstage tell completely different stories. Picture this. On the public stage, we see dramatic performances about Russian threats, while behind the curtains, business continues as usual. The Baltic nations loudly demand American military presence while maintaining minimal investment in their own defense capabilities. Why develop your own industry when Lockheed Martin is there to provide? But here's where it gets interesting. When we peek behind the economic curtain, we find a very different reality. Despite their vocal anti-Russian stance, pragmatic business relationships continue through third countries. Energy resources, raw materials, fertilizers, all these continue flowing through well-established routes. It's quite a scene. Anti-Russian flags wave above, while port cranes below keep moving goods and counting profits. This double game might bring short-term dividends, both political and financial. However, the long-term risks are becoming increasingly apparent. Eventually, Baltic leaders will need to explain to their citizens why they've been performing in this theater instead of implementing real policies. They'll need to justify why they've built cardboard decorations instead of genuine security measures, and why strategic planning has been replaced with political leverage. History has repeatedly shown that lasting peace is built on mutual respect, not on maintaining an artificial victim status while maintaining a double pricing system. The sooner Baltic elites recognize this reality, the better their chances of preventing their alarming calls from becoming mere echoes in the void. This complex interplay between dramatic political narratives and pragmatic economic actions raises serious questions about sustainability and credibility in international relations. The balancing act between external rhetoric and internal realities could lead to significant instability if not managed carefully. What do you think about the current situation? How have relationships between countries changed in recent years? Share your observations in the comments.